おいロビン、なんでおめえがこんな奴らと一緒にいるんだ。出てきたきゃちゃんと理由を言え。
そうよ、こいつら政府の人間だって言うじゃない。どうして？
聞き分けが悪いのね。コックさんとセインさんにお別れは言ったはずよ。伝えてくれなかったの？
伝えたよ。だけど俺だって納得できねえ。なんでだロビン。
私の願いを叶えるためよ。あなたたちと一緒にいても決して叶わない願いを、それを成し遂げるためならば、私はどんな犠牲も厭わない。誰にも邪魔はさせない。
Chapter 347 picks up right where the last chapter ends. I say this now because sometimes there will be instances where it won't pick up from where the last chapter ends as it cuts away from the current events to something else. But for now, it's been pretty linear. First panel we get is a double-page spread of our main players in the room. This panel is great in seeing how Robin is in the center of this frame, since the whole reason why the Straw Hats are here is to get her back, so it puts her in full view front and center of the goal they want to achieve. The panel reflects that with her importance. I love how the shot is framed and composited here. It's a simple detail, but I adore it. Luffy exclaims that he found her, while Robin has exclamation points over her looking concerned. While I always have a hyperfixation on characters sweating, but I always like to point out how uneasy Robin is here, while the rest of CP9 members are completely calm throughout all of this, where there is not a sign of worry emitting from them. Even the rest of the crew is very stressed about the situation. Robin by all accounts should be completely calm like what CP9 is displaying here as well, but she's not fully composed here. If she truly didn't care about the crew anymore, she would be relaxed with no sign of sweating in this moment. Even if this detail is subtle, this is a sign or clue that something is up. This is a tiny hint that she holds some kind of connection to the crew still, despite her actions here and later in this chapter. She's surrounded by very strong people, so in theory, she should be very relaxed and not be worried. It's another thing to point out how her motives are in question once again, and how she's reacting to seeing Luffy here. So this subtle detail is important to mention. I like to think it's her not expecting him to come to her aid here, and is thinking on the fly to handle this situation as best as possible because she knows they're going to ask questions why she's doing all this. It's similar in a way to how she came up with a plan in Elbaf in extreme circumstances. So she's really good in high duress situations. Remembering earlier in the arc, she told Chopper it's a habit of hers to observe people's moods, so I imagine she is aware that they will be asking questions. So it holds merit in what I'm assuming she's thinking here, in my opinion. I love that Chopper is super glad to see Robin again, remembering how much he put on himself for thinking Robin leaving was his fault. So there's still a lot of guilt that he has. So it feels super well in line for him to be extremely relieved and glad to see her again. Polly seeing Iceberg like this has him baffled on what is going on, and he starts to put the pieces together that these people are trying to assassinate Iceberg, and he thinks that this is some kind of sick joke. We get Luffy saying that those are the shipwrights. Zoro adds in that he recognizes the guy with the square nose. Nami adds that this assassination attempt came from inside the organization. And again, things like this I always love to point out, but I love how all three of them each figure out what is going on. Chopper doesn't really pick all of this out, but he is the youngest, so I can forgive him for a lot of this. But it feels like it makes the most sense how all three of these people equally have a moment to realize what is going on. And it's nice to see that they pick apart this bit by bit. It's something that I like pointing out because in combat I always like all the Straw Hats getting a fair amount of screen time. Same thing can be said with piecing things or events together. Lucci's speech to Polly is the biggest punch and adds even more in how heartless they are, and how dedicated they are to their mission, and wants to smash in Iceberg's face to prove what he says to him, that they work for the government, and if he happens to think they doesn't believe him, he will do those actions. Not only is this line bitter, harsh, and cold, but it really meant nothing to Lucci, seemingly, of the friendship that he had with Polly, and it was just a big facade. He even points out and laments on how all those days spent together building ships all day and night, adding into Polly's fear as well as the viewer to get an insight of just how much time they spent together. To know it meant nothing is a horrible thing and feeling for Polly to hear. With One Piece and its concept of friendships, this is about as cruel of a thing to hear from someone. I really feel bad for Polly here. Even Luffy's shocked face proves how absolutely harsh Lucci's comments are, that he's left speechless by it. Again, really making it known how he is here, and this adds to it. Polly is absolutely enraged by this and how they are messing with him, that all this time he could talk just fine and making fun of him. Iceberg tells him to stop, but he runs towards him anyways, ready to attack him, only to be stopped by Lucci, who stabs him with his index finger, as his attack name is called Finger Pistol. Even though he's about ready to fall over, he still questions why they would do this, and he still can't believe it himself. Again, Polly isn't really the main focus here, but again, it's really important to show off how bad these villains are, but it's imperative to highlight these actions, which makes it for when they eventually overcome these people all the more satisfying, seeing how painfully awful and evil these people are. We get the reveal that Lucci and the other CP9 members trained in the arts that go beyond anything that they can imagine. A martial art that once they train to acquire this, makes the human body equal to a weapon. It's called the Six Powers. The master of art that is as strong as 100 men. This explains their named attacks that they've been doing up to this point, and there's a reason for it. They will continue to elaborate on this further, on which each of these 6 powers consist of, so I'll wait until they bring it up themselves. But I'm sure some of them could be guessed early on if you go back and reread the previous chapters. But seeing how Polly is stabbed here absolutely tells us that this was the same attack Lucci did to Polly off panel, seeing all the bullet-sized holes in him were merely made with his finger, as well as the attack name he used on him as well. These powers that they have are genuinely terrifying to see, and seem so insane that these things that you can get through by training. It tells us that they are fighting experienced and talented fighters, which by this point in the series, they never really came across this type of skill set. It's another layer to what makes this group one of my favorite villain groups in the series, for the threat they possess, and how the series will continue to break new grounds and enemies that they have to face. They aren't fighting pirates, but ones with real combat knowledge and abilities and are trained to kill. We get a few panels that flash back to Polly's time with them all, and while it's short, it really seems to tell us just how much he enjoyed being around them, and really considered them friends to him. Far as we know, except for Iceberg, these were the only friends he's ever really had. So it's just these 2 panels alone paints a good enough picture of their time together, and this is awful from his perspective that for these 5 years, they were just lying to him like this. Just as Lucci is about to finish off Polly, Luffy interrupts him and tells him to stop it. Even Lucci is a bit surprised by seeing this by his exclamation point, but he catches Luffy's kick as he says iron body as Luffy sends a barrage of punches at him, which have no effect. He says shave and disappeared and stabs him in the neck with his finger. This only flings him back as he gags. He says if Luffy was normal, he would have had a hole in his neck and died, but he only survived because he was made of rubber. It's important to mention now for what comes up later, but Lucci certainly isn't being very gentle here. Luffy then grabs Polly's body and takes him towards him. I liked how even Lucci questions seeing this, as he must be slightly confused a pirate would do this and care for somebody else. And it's a great moment for Luffy to get Polly away from Lucci, seeing he was just trying to kill him, prioritizing making sure he's safe than to try to get another hit on Lucci here, which he could have tried in this moment. But it's always nice to point out how he protects others around him if he can, and how thoughtful he can be of others. Another small detail I like is that Luffy asks him that he built ships with Polly, and Lucci confirms that that's the case, but things are different now. Luffy completely believes it and accepts that he is indeed a traitor. Luffy has had a record of understanding people and their intentions in a very short amount of time. So to see Luffy completely understand Lucci has seemingly no redeeming qualities to him and is truly evil so quickly is no shock. But it is important to highlight because he doesn't give up on Robin's good nature this easily, and still believes in her to be a good person. And it shows how much he cares about her and won't give up on getting her back, and the contrast of how he handles this information with Lucci compared to Robin. Which again makes Luffy so endearing is his care for his crew and what he's willing to do for them, and how much he sticks his neck out for his crewmates. Luffy and how the other crew handles all this is just as important as Robin in this arc, so it's all very important to mention. Luffy vows he made a promise to Polly they would thrash whoever was trying to kill Iceberg, and Kaku asks him why is he taking Polly's side, and tells him he's got business with him too. Robin's silence is being highlighted once again with the ellipses being shown, so I think we're supposed to really think about this since it's being shown here. But what could it mean? This comes in the middle of the panel where Kaku says that why is he taking Polly's side. It could mean she's just unaware of all the things that went on with Luffy and Polly and has nothing to say about it. It could be just a reminder that she is here among all the drama that's going on, but I highly doubt the readers would feel the need to be reminded that she's here in this very room. But I feel those wouldn't be as interesting enough of a theory. The most interesting theory that I think fits in my opinion, it could be that Oda is reminding us that Robin has no idea what has gone on between Kaku and the crew. Robin only knows Luffy was interested in finding a carpenter in Water 7, and after that she went shopping with Chopper, so she has no idea Kaku went to the ship to assess the damages and said it was unrepairable, and that they have to buy a new ship, which then led to the conflict between Usopp and Luffy. She knows nothing about any of these events happening, so she would be completely in the dark of what Luffy is saying here, when he means that he's got business with Kaku since Luffy is thinking he may have been lying about the ship's condition. Since he's with CP9, it's fair to assume that what he said couldn't be believed and he wasn't being honest about what he told Zoro before. This is something that comes up later. Zoro mentions the same thing Luffy is saying here when he brings it up to Kaku. It's possible this panel is just reminding us that Robin doesn't know what is going on between the two, and it's a simple reminder of that. Luffy says to Robin what gives and why is she with those guys. If you want to leave them, tell them why. Nami agrees by saying that those people are saying that they are with the government, and why is she with them? She tells them that you people don't listen very well, do you? She told the cook and the ship's doctor that she was leaving. Didn't they tell you? Chopper says they did tell them, but they didn't get why. And he begs again to Robin, asking why. She says to make her wish come true. If she stays with you people, this wish will never be fulfilled. To accomplish her goal, she will make any sacrifice. Zoro says you would go as far to frame your friends for murder. He questions what is this wish of hers. She says that she doesn't need to tell him that. There's a good bit to unpack here. Not only is it sad how Robin's leaving is bothering him, but Robin's response to this is just super heartless and cold sounding. Calling them you people on 2 occasions, and this is really the first instance of it being shown here. It's a line that really shows out the connection that she wants to break with them here, and a deeper underlying theme with her that she doesn't feel that she deserves to belong with them. The way she's trying to distance herself with them is just really hard to watch, knowing what she desires deep down. But she continues this once again by calling Sanji and Chopper the cook and the ship's doctor, which is another instance of her not feeling like they are worth saying their names properly, and continues this wall or barrier she feels in truly opening up her heart to them. She acts like Sanji and Chopper didn't tell the rest of the crew about this, which is sort of weird. I'm amazed she thinks they didn't tell them or sounds confused by it. It comes off again that she didn't expect to see them here, or she thinks they are only here because Sanji and Chopper didn't mention this to them and kept it a secret for some bizarre reason. Which Robin is very wrong to assume this. Robin does come across as if she's just sort of spitballing ideas and theories on why they're even here to start. I'm going to assume she thinks that Sanji and Chopper just told them that she wasn't leaving and that she needs rescue. Which obviously at this point in the story she doesn't want to be saved. Or maybe the two didn't tell them the full details? I'm just assuming on what she's thinking here, but I just got this feeling that she just thinks that the two didn't tell the rest of the crew the full details on everything, and somehow thinks Sanji and Chopper never told the rest of the crew that she was leaving, which obviously doesn't make any sense. And it's once again her not totally understanding fully how much the crew values each other in this way. As we'll see later deeper into the story, Robin will greatly underestimate just how far the group is willing to go for her sake. But I got this feeling that she really didn't expect to see them again, seeing how surprised she was to see Luffy last chapter. She just can't understand why they will want her back, which this also continues into the massive self-worth issues that she has. I love that Chopper is the one to reply to Robin's comment here, since what she said there is directed towards him. It's a perfectly fitting time for him to respond, and him begging her as to why that she would leave really hurts my heart since Chopper loves Robin so much. As I said before, Chopper has a lot of guilt thinking that this is all his fault that she left and didn't keep an eye on her, and as well as what Sanji told him before he left, which isn't revealed yet, but I'm sure it's ringing through his mind about her motives, and believing in Sanji's words to him are correct, and that logic being challenged here. Robin's reply to Chopper is equally as important. She plays it very cleverly to not reveal her true motives here, and only says the bare minimum. She words this in a very smart manner because in retrospect, what she said here is indeed correct. Her wish really can't be fulfilled if she stays with them. But what this wish of hers isn't fully known yet. She doesn't provide the full context to what she means here. And just taking her words at face value, it really comes off as she is referring to killing Iceberg is this wish of hers that she wants to do, and can't accomplish it if she's with them, and she'll do anything to make this happen. It really does come across in this moment that Robin is just truly evil and a villain here. It was super painful to see her be like this, at least for me, because I was really doubting ever liking her, seeing her like this in the first place. Now to clarify, I saw the anime version of this first, but I'm trying to also put myself in the perspective of the manga readers at this point in time, and what they could be possibly feeling about Robin in this moment. The detail in her really sells this evil look that she has. It's basically the same panel from the previous page, but this time more zoomed in, the detail much crisper, harsher, and meaner to reflect her scowl look that she has with cross-hatching details around her eyes, nose, and mouth. Again, how Oda draws emotions has always been top-notch, and this is another case of it. But he does a great job making her look to be in about as bad of light as possible with how it's drawn here. And it hits even harder with the added details in this drawing to hit that emotion that makes my stomach churn, since almost half of the page is set to focus on just this expression and line. Even how she looks here in general, she's clearly way more confident in saying this. Any bit of that uneasy feeling that she was having earlier in the chapter is completely gone, and we can tell by how she's not sweating anymore, and her overall composure is a lot more put together. She reverts back to her typical stoic and calm nature here to relay this point of hers. It gives me Miss All Sunday vibes in a way. She does an amazing job to keep this act up in retrospect, and it's something really interesting to point out just in how she comes across saying this all to them. Even if what she's saying, like I was saying before, is technically true. I love how the text is even in darker, thicker, and bolder lettering here to really make her point abundantly clear, and it stands out so much more than the regular text. It really makes you pay attention to her dialogue and really gives off this dark, sinister vibe to it. It's a series of panels that almost undoes all the likability that you had in her just in the words that she says here to them. But if that wasn't enough, what she does later makes her likability go down even further. The last point to go into before we move on is how this panel has the entire background detail gone and is replaced with a white space. It makes you completely focus on what she says even more, which adds to the dramatic atmosphere this panel presents. This is a similar approach to what Oda did in chapter 340, for example, when it relates to a deep personal moment that is being shared. Zoro makes a good point after what she says that I'm sure even the readers would question is would she go as far to frame them for murder? And to question what is this wish of hers. Her reply again is the most interesting part. She doesn't reply to Zoro's first question. She basically ignores it completely. But instead, she chooses to reply to this wish that she has as she prefers that they did need to know. This line of dialogue that she says feels very similar to the same reply that she gave to Sanji back in chapter 340 when he questions why would she do all this and she says that there's no need for him to know. It gives off a similar vibe. When they want to know the answer to her motives, she won't give a direct answer, but only deflect the question as they don't deserve to know. Coming back around to Zoro, this is another hint or clue that something isn't right about all of this. It's something I never really picked up on as a detail on my first watch of the anime, but seeing this a second time, it really does subtly clue you in about her motives, or refusing to elaborate more that really stand out looking back on it. But it's how she replies to it that once again is very interesting. The cross-hatching lines now envelop her eyes, and she looks even angrier than before that he dared to ask that question, as it's prying into something she clearly doesn't want to reveal because she wants to hide her true intentions from them still. In Sabaody, Shaky said that information is a weapon, in regards to Luffy knowing about his pirate rivals and their names. Robin says the same exact line in Egghead as well. So she absolutely believes in his mindset. That and Robin and Shaky are a lot more similar than one would think. So if we apply that way of thinking for Robin back in Egghead and apply it to Water 7 here, so she believes in that as well, where revealing too much information she thinks will jeopardize her wish. If she says too much, then it'll give them even more incentive to save her when she doesn't want them to do that, which goes into her thinking she has no worth or deserves any kind of rescue. Though there's even more to this that I don't dare spoil yet, but explains why she doesn't reveal much at all and keeps a lot of the details missing to purposely make her look as bad as possible. She does this in a way to likely make the crew not want to pursue her anymore, and that she's just that dedicated to this wish of hers that she wants accomplished. Once again, just a simple line that she has in Egghead harkens back to past arcs, giving it much more meaning than what it did before, which is one among many factors that the manga does incredibly well with. And that's where One Piece is at its best, and it's just one small line, but it adds so much more to what she says, and as well as why she doesn't need to tell them about this wish of hers in a more blunt manner. Her not saying too much in this moment also goes into how careful she is, which is something she's had to do all her life. The final takeaway from this before we move on is how each of the crew members have a moment to get a chance to say something to her here. Luffy being the first one to ask why is she with those guys, and to tell them why she's leaving. Luffy, I think among all the other crew in comparison, has held Robin in the highest regard, since he's the only one who really understands her the most. Nami elaborates on Luffy's point when he says those guys, backing up her captain, is a small but really great touch to add onto what Luffy is saying here, and it complements the two's desperate pleas to why she is doing all this, when Nami asks if they are with the government. It nicely continues on to what Luffy is saying here, with a tiny bit more clarity here, and it's fitting since she's the one to say this in this moment. Again, Nami understands full-heartedly exactly what Luffy is trying to say here, and I really like that she expands onto what he's saying. As I said before, Chopper responding after Robin is perfect since her question directly relates to him, and it's great that he's the one to speak up there. Zoro being the last one to speak is fitting too. He waited to hear everything that Robin had to say, and then made a comment. And he asked those two questions that I'm sure most would be thinking in that moment, putting the viewer or reader in this case in his shoes, and remaining the most calm here compared to everyone else, maintaining his neutral-like stance that he was talking about back on the rooftop earlier. With combat, I like all the characters to get a lot of shine, and everyone get their moment, and for it to all feel balanced, which I feel the pre-time skip era of One Piece does this aspect incredibly well. Same way will go for dialogue and interactions, and that no one is left out and all contribute a fair amount in their own ways, making this brief conversation fitting as it packs for mystery into Robin being more unclear of what her motives truly are. Again, how the crew works together here, even without really thinking about it, because none of this dialogue was really planned for them to say, nor did they really know what to expect. Iceberg says that Robin is not sane and calls her crazy. He thinks she doesn't understand what she's trying to do. She tells him that he didn't ask for his opinion and tells him to be quiet as she uses her powers to restrain him and says to not get in her way. Luffy asks what are you doing and if she's serious. Chopper also says what's happened to her and questions if she's really their enemy now. Now if you thought Robin looked bad before, this adds on to this even more so with her looking even worse now just in the detail of how she's presented here. This is so strange to see her act like this since she's joined the crew, which this point is highlighted by Chopper's comments here. It feels reminiscent of her back in Alabasta in a way with how cold she appears here, as well as looking very threatening and intimidating in this panel. These two moments feel similar in a way. In Alabasta, when she was in pursuit of getting to the poneglyph that was her life's goal of finding, then when Tashi gets in her way, she becomes extremely angry when someone wants to interfere with her dream. In Water 7, she has a goal that she wants to accomplish no matter what, and Iceberg talking threatened her chances to make this wish come true. So this is a repeating pattern that anyone gets in the way of her goals, she will become very aggressive and resort to violence to get what she wants. I do find her level of aggression to be kind of interesting in and of itself just on the progression of it over time. At least in 3 instances where she's being threatened, or at least being given a problem to. In Alabasta, for example, Tashi gets in the way of Robin, and she says that she's going to kill her. Now she obviously doesn't go through with that, but instead breaks her leg. Or at the very least damages her leg pretty badly, which is definitely a progression considering what she wanted to do, but did show at least back then that she wasn't as ruthless. And her words, at least in that moment, was kind of her bluffing in a way. In Jaya, this is all off panel, but we can infer that she does injure or at least harm the other people that get in her way, when people were giving her a hard time when she was just wanting to know information about cricket. In Water 7, after Robin restrains him, there's never a moment where Iceberg is in a cast, to show that Robin dislocated or broken his arm or shoulder. That just never happened. In a moment much later on in Ennie's lobby, we see Iceberg repairing the Mary's ship, and in that moment we see him using both of his arms with no problems at all. And in that panel, it's only been about a day since the incident on the mansion occurred. She restrains him just enough in a very specific manner to clearly not break his arm when she could have easily done so. So there is some kind of progression with just at least how violent she can be. And even though she is being very aggressive here, it could have been much worse. Which I still think gives a bit more character to her just to show that she doesn't have to be as violent. Again, she still got her point across to everyone and what she wanted to do and accomplish, but she didn't go as far as breaking Iceberg's arm to make that point clear. It's just something neat to point out and how that progression has evolved and changed over time, even by Water 7. But I do like that even early on, there's at least layers to this. This is a fantastic bit of detail how she carefully toes the line between being ruthless on the surface, but still being a bit merciful. Since Iceberg was going to die anyways, she really could have just broken his arm in that moment, but didn't because underneath her coldness still shows that she won't go as far to wound him in a critical way, and how much she's changed since Alabasta. She essentially only went as far as she absolutely needed to here. I just think this is a very important detail that I don't think many people are going to really remember, and I think it's worth pointing out. Her determination to make sure Iceberg doesn't say too much I think is a big takeaway here, making sure he remains silent before he has the chance to reveal what is truly going on. Now what's great about this arc is how well thought out all of this is in retrospect, and how all of this is done in just how well intricately planned it all is. But seeing this for the first time still leaves you shocked in what she's doing, so this works in both ways in retrospect and in first time reader. But knowing how this plays out, it's an important reminder to mention that Iceberg is the only one that knows Robin's true intentions, and it gets explained when this event takes place. So it makes what he's saying here even more interesting just in how frantic he looks in this moment, and scared of what Robin intends to do, which heightens the curiosity of what her actual motives are. But ironically enough, what Iceberg says here, while brief, worked in Robin's favor because this makes her come across even worse, seeing how ruthless and cold she's acting here. This is just like what Robin said before about this wish of hers, but not giving the full context of it. Now Iceberg has this full context, but we don't know what that is yet. Nor is the audience aware of what Iceberg knows in this moment, since it's not revealed yet. Those puzzle pieces are all ready to be put together, and it's fascinating to see how all of this is in motion, making all the interactions add up and so much sense in retrospect. Just how she glances over to him, and just this angular, cold look that she gives is chilling. Almost like he's not even worth the time to even look at him, just in how her eye darts back a bit. It's almost like he's not even worth the time to look over at him, at least at first, but she didn't want him to speak here. Getting Polly's reaction to Iceberg being held down is perfect. He has the biggest connection to Iceberg, so it's very important to know how he's reacting to it. Once again, I really like how Robin looks here. Her face is more detailed in the artwork, more intense shading details all over her. It's a really gorgeous and terrifying panel showing off how menacing she looks here, and scary in a way of how determined she is that no one messes up her plan. How she silences him, again, is another key or clue to what's going on. She's afraid that he'll say too much, which explains why she's extra mean looking here and more determined to keep him quiet. how she holds him down, and just looking at it just appears to be super painful with his arm up in the air like that. It looks like she's trying to pull off his arm or dislocate it. Once again, it's important to mention how before, when she was laying on top of him, how she was overdoing it. Which now that we see it in this moment, it really kind of goes to show that she didn't really need to do that in the first place, but she was being extra secure, which is what I was saying before. It's just something funny to point out. I just find it neat to see that comparison. Even Luffy is shocked to see this from her and questions if she's serious. And honestly, I don't blame him for feeling this way, since other times that he's seen Robin, even in Alabasta for example, she was never this sinister or cold. At least from Luffy's perspective. Which should really point out how eager Robin is to maintain this goal of hers. Though in hindsight, she's got more motivation than ever before to make sure this wish of hers goes without a hitch. Which will justify her being overly cautious here to make sure that he's kept quiet. Chopper as well highlights this with how unnatural this is of Robin to be like this when he says what's happened to her. They really seem to understand, at least in Chopper's case because he's pointing it out here, as well as Nami too, and really everyone for that matter, she was never like this. And it really adds to the shock and horror that they have on their faces. Even Nami is completely left speechless, unable to say anything about what is happening in front of her. Luffy is gritting his teeth, realizing something about this is completely wrong. Chopper's plea to Robin if she's really their enemy hurts my heart so much. I know how much Chopper cares about her, and feels like that this is all his fault that this is happening in the first place, and he probably really hates the fact that she could very well possibly be their enemy now. Which makes this really sad to see and hear from him. The anguish on his face and everything just really upsets me. That this is what she's putting them through, and they don't even know why in their eyes. Lucci says they hate to break up this reunion, and they have to go meet a person of some importance that they must find right now. They are in a hurry. They have no more business in his mansion, and absolutely no more use for you. He asks Khalifa how long do they have left, which he says 2 minutes. He says in 2 minutes this mansion will go up in a ball of flames, to which Luffy's surprised to hear that. He says that fire is such an effective method for erasing all sorts of evidence. If they rather not burn to death, he says, they should hurry and leave the mansion. That is, assuming you can get by them. Some of the takeaways is that Lucci is being oddly nice, saying that they should leave the mansion. At least that's how it starts off. But as he continues talking, it's clear no matter what, they aren't getting out of there without going through them. So the implication is clear, they want to give them a beating, or at least what is presented in this moment of wanting to kill them, which makes Robin look even worse that she's allowing this to happen, which in turn makes you question her as a person more in this moment, wondering why would you ever like her in the first place seeing this occur. We get another shot of the clock which shows it's about to hit 10 PM. This was another plan of theirs from the start, which was at 10 o'clock the mansion should be set on fire. So another part of their plan is being revealed here too. The other thing is about how fire is a good tool for erasing all kinds of evidence. A glorious bit of foreshadowing on display here, and it's very eerie of him saying that knowing what comes up later on. But he really does sound like a mouthpiece for the world government. A complete pawn to them in every way. Lines like that give me a shiver down my spine just because I know what this is referring to, and foreshadowing in One Piece always has some of the best payoff to those aspects. Something else I thought is worth pointing out is how Robin is turned away from them in this panel. It could be the most literal interpretation why she did this, and it's a way to show that she's turned her back on the crew. That is true in this case, there's a lot more going on under the surface just in how she's positioned here. But looking at it in face value, it does appear to look that way, which works in the favor of the first time viewer and what they may be thinking. But it also works extremely well in retrospect, knowing her true motives, as well as how she feels deep down towards them. The balancing act of how it works in both ways like this makes this arc so well written and how crafty the storytelling is. I'll get into this aspect more in the next chapter. Zoro says how it looks like they plan on getting rid of them. Their friend Nico Robin has clearly chosen her side. He questions Luffy, does he now understand that Robin's left the ship? He says he doesn't buy it as the chapter ends. I suppose first off, I'm not shocked Zoro believes the words Robin says. Robin does put on an insanely convincing act here, even if there's a lot of truth in what she says to them. It's an aspect I honestly think makes everyone second guess her as a character by this point. Everyone besides Luffy. Which him believing in her and not being convinced by the things she's saying is genuinely inspiring. He's not buying the game that she's playing here. This moment takes me back to when she first joined the crew and everyone was against her joining. Well, except for Sanji, of course. But Sanji's emotional intelligence, too, is actually pretty damn impressive, and I think we'll definitely get to that later. But it felt very reminiscent of that in this moment. But in hindsight, Luffy is completely right. He understands something about this just doesn't make sense to him. Even if Luffy can't verbally explain it in detail, he understands something about this is just not making sense to him. Something to point out with Zoro too is after he hears about what Robin has to say, the next time we get a full body shot of him, we see him clutching onto his sword. He's ready to fight and he's given up on Robin being part of the crew and sees her as an enemy to him now. And this notion is conveyed even further with him unsheathing his sword with a sound effect on top of it. There's another big comparison to be had here with this encounter with her and Zoro. Reminds me a lot of Arlong Park with Nami. Back then she wanted to betray the crew, which this arc echoes a lot of that in ways while being similar but also very different. This is one of them. In Arlong Park, to sum it up, Zoro calls Nami's bluff on the side that she's chosen to align herself with, and Zoro questions if this is the real version of Nami before him. Arlong comments that she made a fool out of Zoro, that she even forgave the death of a parent for money. She's their cold-blooded witch woman. After Arlong's comments, Nami's cold, stoic look shifts as she gets very upset, because she still deeply hates Arlong for everything that he put her through, and everything that he said there is essentially a lie. Zoro picks up or notices Nami's composure shifting a lot, and this is where he enacts his plan. He then puts himself in the water, risking his life to prove his point. Nami then goes and rescues him, which shows Zoro that he was right and proved Nami isn't as bad as she's making herself out to be, because she still cared about him enough to save him. Not only once, but twice. Zoro back then knew Nami was a good person all along. Which makes this moment hit harder is Zoro completely believes the words Robin is saying. He's intelligent in his own right when it comes to understanding a person's heart, though arguably maybe not to the same degree as Luffy or Sanji, but it's evident he's pretty good at it. So it adds more weight to even Zoro believing her words and figures she really is leaving the crew for good. This also adds to Robin's level of manipulation and wordplay and her strong poker face game to be outstanding. Seeing Zoro can generally read people pretty well, but can't figure out Robin by comparison to the instance with Nami, like how Luffy can understand people, which I think is important to compare how he's handling this information compared to the moment in Arlong Park. This also adds into how different Nami is compared to Robin, where she didn't slip at all with her composure, adding to her experience of the pirate underworld life for this many decades, as well as the resolve that she has to fulfill this goal of hers no matter what. It could come across as Luffy being blinded by his belief on Robin being a good person and being irrational, but it really goes to show how much faith he has in her, and even among all this that's going on, he still doesn't think that she left the crew. When Luffy said that Robin was taken by those guys earlier, it could be the hint or the possibility she was left under a condition that was not of her own doing. That's what Luffy sounds like he's trying to say, but can't articulate his words clearly enough. But up to this point in the story, this motivation of hers is kept vague enough that only in retrospect does this line have another meaning. Luffy's been told so many times that Robin's been involved in the Iceberg assassination attempt. He's heard it from Paulie, then he went to Iceberg directly, where he said that he saw Robin with his own eyes. He's heard what Chopper relayed to them about what she said when she encountered him and Sanji earlier, and even now, Robin herself. While in this interaction that she does share with them, she doesn't directly confirm it herself here, but what she implies logically all points to her doing this, and it comes off like she has no use for them and that they're holding her back. But despite all this, he won't believe this to be true. One element I do want to discuss is something I think needs more attention to focus on, as another reason why Luffy didn't buy her leaving the crew like this. I've talked about ad nauseum of the things that Robin did in Alabasta to help Luffy out. This is another thing that I think needs to be brought up. In Skypiea, when Luffy comes across much of his crew knocked out, Robin wakes up and tells Luffy that Nami was taken and says at this rate Skypiea will be destroyed. If Robin truly was always this heartless and cruel of a person as what we're seeing here, she wouldn't have bothered to tell Luffy any of these details if she didn't care about Nami and the island itself. Knowing how intelligent Robin is, I like to think she knows Luffy's rubber body will be a great counter to Enel's lightning. I might be giving Robin too much credit here, but in Alabasta, she does talk about Luffy's rubber body surviving the rubble that's going to fall on top of him. So she's well aware of his rubber body being able to withstand a lot of force. But what's even more wonderful is after Luffy leaves, he never orders Robin to watch out for his crew. Without him saying anything to her, he knew to trust her enough to keep them safe, which she did. It was this unspoken moment between the two that I think shows the trust that he put in her. It's a moment I think will not get the attention it deserves, that adds to Luffy's trust in Robin as a caring person who does value the crew she's with, and it's something Luffy didn't forget. Luffy knew that Robin would keep them safe and put his belief and faith in her to protect them. That is an incredible amount of trust that he has of her in this moment, regardless if he ordered her to watch over them or not. He just knew Robin as a person in the way that she's been with them up until that point, and how he can entrust the lives of his crew with her and be confident of that judgment. There's just something really, really wholesome and beautiful about that to me. How this keeps playing and how to feel about Robin is fascinating. Oda went out of his way to make her look as mean and as bad as possible here, and it worked in spades as the mystery of her motive heightens even more. This all works so amazingly well since we spent so much time with her in the group by this point, so it really is difficult to watch and see her appear so ruthless and uncaring here. This one chapter just continues to add more bad faith onto Robin, making her look like an absolute monster. This is just another building block onto her arc that she's going through, and it's always done so incredibly well. And that's all I got for this video. I seem to have a really bad habit of just talking way too much out of just one chapter than probably that is warranted. But again, there's so much layers and so much moving parts and things to talk about. I almost feel like I can just be in her mind thinking about what she's just thinking of in these situations or what to get out of these panels and everything, which next chapter will definitely get into a lot more of that. So I'm sorry for the wait. I was also on vacation. Then I got sick during the vacation, and I was sick even after it. So that kind of affected the video time of this and everything. It really screwed up a lot of that. So that's why the delay in this part coming out took a little bit longer. That and the previous video of me talking about her outfit colors, that also kind of ate into my time too, because I spent like 2 weeks on that. So this video got pushed back more than it really should have, especially with other factors too. So I'm sorry for that. I'm hoping the next one could be a little bit shorter, but I never know when I start recording these and how much I talk and ramble, so I can't predict anything. But yeah, we're just ever so closer to getting the real big talking points, which I've been so excited to talk about for just years now. So we're getting there. We're getting closer. So I will see you all in the next video and all that good stuff, and take care and have a good day.